Welcome to the Startup of the Year podcast, where each episode we showcase exciting new companies from around the world. This podcast is produced by Established, creators of the Startup of the Year program. Established is focused on helping organizations with their innovation, startup, and communication strategies. Thank you to our podcast sponsor, Silicon Valley Bank.
Hi, I'm Rich Malloy with Startup of the Year, and we have a quick episode today. If you listen to our podcast, you know that Silicon Valley Bank supports the work that we do. Did you also know that each year they produce a Startup Outlook report? For 10 years, they've provided insights into startup ecosystems and insights that come from you, the startups. The survey for the 2020 report is now open, and SVB wants your input. To learn a little bit more about the report, I'm here today with Lewis Hauer, Managing Director of the Early Stage Practice at Silicon Valley Bank. How's it going, Lewis?
Great. Thanks. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. And so, Lewis, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your role with Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah, so I lead our early stage startup banking practice here, primarily in the United States, but I've been in the venture capital, family office, private credit space for basically all of my career, and recently joined SVB about a year and a half back, really to focus on how do we continue to expand, improving the probability of success of early stage companies, right? Those founders, the founders with an idea, the companies straight out of the gates that really are seeking access and connectivity and support in and around making their dream a reality. And so our team focuses on some of the core and basic blocking and tackling of banking, but then most exciting is how do we provide access to the information, to the insights, to the other people within this ecosystem to help these companies be successful.
Excellent. Very cool. And, SVB has such a great presence around the community. I've been in the Colorado community for about 8 years, and SVB has a very consistent and welcoming presence here that is always adding value. And I know that's the case in other markets as well. So we appreciate your support and all that you guys do for startups.
Yeah, it's been exciting to see, even just in the little bit since I've been here, the amazing amounts of growth that we're seeing. And, you mentioned Colorado, some of our great partners out there like Techstars and others, but really, I'm based here at the quote unquote mothership in Silicon Valley, but we see not only tremendous growth opportunities here, but even, I would say, more exciting growth opportunities in a lot of our other regions across not just the US, but across the world, where more and more of these startup ecosystems are really becoming mature. And it's exciting to see how we can continue to expand in those places.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that ties in really well with the Outlook report that you do. Tell us about this report.
Yeah, sure. So every fall, we reach out to our clients and partners and all of those folks within that startup ecosystem and community, really to kind of take the finger on the pulse of how are they viewing the year ahead, right? So, we are a bank. We do our own sorts of reporting and analysis and outlooks around how we are going to perform, but really no better source for us than going straight to the founders and the investors and the partners in the space to say, what are you seeing, hearing, doing, and how do you think about what the next 12 to 18 months are going to be looking like in terms of hiring, raising money, building teams, what are general business conditions? And I think this year, we've been doing this for about 10 years, but this year I think is really, really interesting because we've now, I would say we're probably going on a year plus of everyone kind of looking either over their shoulder or looking another quarter or two out and saying, are we going to hit another rocky patch? What's going to happen, in 6 months from now? How are we planning now? And for us to be able to really reach into our client base, our partner base, and the ecosystem and hear straight from them is why we like to do it. And I would say even more importantly is we don't just take that and digest it all internally. We take that, digest it internally and process it and then share it broadly. So it can be something that is, used and utilized and seen by a lot of eyes to say SVB, one of the largest organizations touching startups and the ecosystem of the startup world, has come out with, here's some of the things that people are seeing, hearing, doing, and then how can we make actionable insights thereafter.
Yeah, that's great. And sharing that data back to the community is such a value add. I thought that the 2019 report was really interesting. I'd love to hear some of your findings from 2019.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, some of those key kind of trends of the questions always is okay, when are we raising? How much should we be raising? So just kind of some specific bullet points from last year's report is that 71% of our respondents say that they've successfully raised money. People understand that there's capital available and out there, but what we are seeing is really a desire by the investor community to see companies with far more traction. So getting to that revenue milestone or having a diversified customer base, really saying, how can we know that this is a going concern before more capital comes in? The other piece that kind of is always the chicken and egg with that for our founders is, well, we need capital to be able to go higher, or can we go higher and then we will generate the capital necessary to hit some of those benchmarks? And for founders, it's always about threading that needle. And one of the interesting data points from last year's survey was that 82% of startups said they were hiring, but 91% of those said it was hard to find people with the right skills. So there's a huge opportunity to continue to build those bridges and get the best talent in. Then the last one, as we look at kind of the various stages, so not just pure early stage, but as you're growing and as founders are always thinking towards what does that exit look like? 50% of our startups here in the US say that their long-term exit strategy is positioned much more towards an acquisition, and only about 18% are saying they're planning for an IPO. And that's always a difficult one to say, like, okay, you have to commit now to this is how it's going to go out. But I would say on the flip side of that, the data of corporate venture involvement, of M&A transactions, of private equity coming into the market being on the rise, we really are seeing that with companies staying private longer. IPOs, we've had some interesting IPOs in 2019 so far, and I think 2020 is primed for more. But it's interesting to see kind of both ends of the spectrum and how founders are viewing their long-term trajectory.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, very interesting information. The hiring is always a pain point. And it's always interesting to see the startups' perspectives on what their exit strategy is, because if you take on outside capital, you're being pushed in that direction to have an exit, whether it's right. From as soon as you take that capital, that's the way your venture capitalist makes their money back. So yeah, so interesting to see how that's playing out, and I think that's a trend to watch on the long term and see how that has changed over the years.
That's right.
So we'll look forward to seeing that.
Yeah,
so where can we learn more?
To go to get access to both previous year's reports as well as the survey is pretty simple. SVB.com. We've got a bunch of really great resource pages, lots of access to information, not just on the Startup Outlook previous reports, but some of the different insights and trends that we compile around specific industries, about fundraising overall, but all there on SVB.com. Look out for the Startup Outlook report and survey. And our biggest ask is it's a help us help you. So the more people that we have taking this survey, the more data and information that we're able to capture, the more robust and rich the results and the information that we can put back out to the ecosystem are. So really appreciate any and all participation in the Outlook survey.
Yep, absolutely. So head over to svb.com, take the survey, share it out with your fellow startups, because startups know startups. So share it with your fellow compatriots, and let's gather that data, especially for those that are outside of the major markets. I love that, Lewis, you mentioned that earlier on, about tapping into startups and other ecosystems that are not in the Bay Area or New York or Boston, and so gathering that information and supporting those startups from all across the U.S. and all over the world.
Absolutely,
and
I think that's even, to me, it's even more compelling around in those other areas where you're not here eating, sleeping, breathing in Silicon Valley. Like it's helpful to have a finger on the pulse of what's going on. It's helpful to understand trends in hiring and cost of running a business and valuations and dollars raised. And that's really what we're trying to help to live up to our promise of improving everyone's probability of success.
Thank you, Lewis. I look forward to seeing the 2020 report. And now it's your turn, dear listener, to share your insights for the 2020 Startup Outlook Report. Go to svb.com or look for the link in the show notes. Silicon Valley Bank, ideas bank here. This has been Rich Malloy with Startup of the Year. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Startup of the Year podcast. Be sure to subscribe and we'll be back with another episode soon.